same blur effect. I added there's the grappling beam. That's it rendered out in wireframe format to give this really cool like,
Did you create the wireframe for that?
Yeah. I just made like one flat plane this way, one flat plane this way, made it a snaky chain sort of thing where I could parent it, and then I rendered out a whole bunch of different ones, where it's like one was the same, the regular one at its normal blur. This one is in its wireframe. You can see it most probably right here. And again, amped up motion blur, add as a layer, add pin mode. Probably one as it's being normal. Coming up right about. There it is again. Actually, perhaps not. I know I use more than. Oh, there we go. There's the other one. This one in its normal sense, where it's not a wireframe mode, it's just its normal texture shaded mode. But again, it's just a blue chain set to add pin, and it isn't even done well. If you look at the end, it's bent in a strange way that isn't very attractive, but you don't really see it. The same goes for Samus's laser sword when she was whipping it around. The way the chain was set up, it just didn't look right when you bent it. It was just kind of because it's parented to bend, and I let it go because it didn't bother me too much. It bothers me now, but it's not a big deal if you ask me. And in the end, we've got this very cool added particle effect. Add some glows. Sometimes I just just put aside like bright colored spheres so that I can just throw it on top to add glow. And it's nothing complicated, just like, I need glow. And with the amount of motion blur that's involved and the way things get hidden, it's hardly visible. And one thing I'm really proud of here is her movement isn't great. It's just, arm moving around. But the reactionary movement is I like a lot, where, oh my, like, what the hell is this thing on my foot? And then whip down, and the arms get thrown up in the air, and it's like slam, which I wish you could see it more behind it, but, you learn to let that go. Again, slam, bounces off the steam pipe, or the steam engine, goes flying again. And the funny thing is, it's actually parented to that character's movement and not the other way around. So, he's pulling it around, or she's pulling it around, rather than the grappling beam pulling her around. And then it gets thrown in here. And then finally, one of the highlight scenes, I get a lot of comments on, is this part where it's not even, the scene is actually much bigger, and those buildings are actually farther back than she is colliding with. I'd say that if the scene was like this big and Samus was in the center here, the Master Chick is right about here, but add some particles and it looks like she's being dragged through the buildings, and then one final poof through that other building being tilted. And you get some pretty good stuff just by fixing it in composite. If I had actually dragged her out to the length of the building, she'd probably be like that big, and you wouldn't even see what was going on. So, why bother? And one of my favorite things here on choice of camera movement is the tilt. Kind of follows it, but on top of that, when real people look up at something, they don't look straight up. They tilt their head a bit, so it's almost as like we were really behind her, pulling her through the buildings. And I think that sense of camera movement, that little touch, which I don't do often enough, rotating the camera along its z-axis, really adds to some things sometimes. It can be, it could very easily, be taken too far. But for this one scene, to me it was perfect, especially the bounce and the tracking of the camera. So I was proud of this scene as well as the shotgun scene. And this scene happened on a whim, really. It should be noted, I forgot to mention that I didn't plan anything in terms of the background. I just threw buildings in, threw the crane in up top, threw that pelican in down at the bottom. And it just happened via coincidence that, all right, now I need this to happen. What do I have? And there were times where I'm like, oh crap, now what do I do? But then I find a solution. Oh, let's drop the crane on the pelican, let the hammer go, and let these scenes fly. And that's kind of just how things happen. Especially, that one sequence where I just kind of just let it go and said, you know what? We'll just throw that pelican at her. I've done large scale objects of tossing of objects as well, but this would be the pinnacle of where he displaces an enormous jet. And, there's little details there, like goes through the corner of the building, then hits the crane, which, by the way, the crane was actually half as big as it is in this scene. I just wasn't predicting that it was going to be used, so it was at half scale to be in the background, and that's it. Also, that antenna tower right there is actually in front of the crane, but because I was too lazy to do the composite, or maybe it was just one night where I'm like, I'm gonna render this scene all at once and do the crane later, the antenna is in front of, is behind the crane where it should be in front for two of these parts. Again, it's behind it up here, and add the particles and a lot of fast movement, and you don't really know.